as I've kind of brutally gone after you all day today, for knowing more than Sean Payton when it comes to managing your team. But in all seriousness, as we joke around, like what would you like? What would you like to see, and what do you think the right answer is when it comes to figuring out this kind of quote unquote quarterback camp battle?
Yeah, and kidding aside, because when I have shared this opinion on the air, I have made sure to say, Sean Payton has forgotten more football than I will ever know. But this is my 8th Broncos training camp, maybe 14th training camp overall, I'm going to have an opinion. And
Yeah.
in this instance, I would like to see Sean Payton tailor the reps a little bit more towards Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham. The traditional setup, and you guys tell me, Mark, in your days, like the traditional setup, the guy who is the third quarterback, he doesn't get the same amount of reps as the one. That's a different setup.
Right.
So when they go into team periods, you're seeing Zach Wilson get the same amount of reps as Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix. And what that does is you're taking the least of practice that we've had in NFL history. This is not 2 days. This is the shortest and least amount of practices in the history of the league. And you're taking those limited reps and dividing them by 3. And so what does that actually look like out at practice? Well, yesterday, in 3 different team periods, if you total the total passes for Bo Nix in 3 different team periods yesterday, it's 5 total passes. On Monday, it was 4 total passes during team periods. And we can keep on saying, oh, it's early, and we are in the first half of training camp. But it is the shortest training camp in the history of the league. And this is a team that's not supposed to be good. This is a team that's got to be greater than the sum of its parts, because from a talent standpoint, they're in the bottom quarter of the NFL. So understanding that, I would just like to see the rep count go up for either Stidham or Bo, because one of those 2 guys is going to be the starter in Seattle on September 8th. It's not going to be Zach Wilson. So when we're seeing false starts and this operation just being disjointed, I just don't think they're getting the proper rep count. I would like to see it go up. I have no doubt, Mark, that dead arm and training camp arm is a thing. I don't disagree with Kurt Warner. How could I? But in this situation, I don't think dead arm is as relevant. In fact, I think it'd be the least relevant thing of any training camp in NFL history, given the time spent out there, the lack thereof, and then taking those reps and dividing them by 3.
Okay, I want to give you something to think about because you're talking about, and obviously those reps will go up because Zach Wilson has been, quote-unquote, demoted, right? So you're going to get more reps between Stidham and between Bo Nix. But let me just throw this at you. With those less reps or the less time in training camp that you have right now, you know what else you have? You have less OTAs, less actual football work on the field leading up to training camp. So you have less of an opportunity to actually be in quote-unquote football shape. So that even though that there are less time and less repetitions in this camp than there ever have been before, guys are less prepared for football activity than they've ever been in the history of this league, because we as a players association are full of morons and we negotiate work time out of football. We negotiate practice out of football because we don't have balls enough to stand up to the owners and say, no, we want lifetime insurance. No, we want this stuff. So we acquiesce to the one thing that we'll get, and that's less practice time. So having less practice time creates a situation where your coach has to manage players. And I talked about to Mike, like, would you like to see Greg Dulcich take every rep? And I know he's been injured, but of course not, because you're managing that guy's hamstring. I personally believe, Zach, right now in the league, you go in the number of injuries and number of season-ending injuries in camp has never been higher than it has been the last couple of years. And I fully expect it's because we train like track athletes and we don't train like football players anymore. So great coaching staffs, but Sean Payton actually went from the most time spent injured in the NFL under Hackett to the least time injured in the NFL last year, which means he understands the management of players' health. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good rebuttal. And I'm sure, look, I am sure there are those conversations being had, and I'm sure there is still some element of a ramp up period, I guess, per se, like I'm doing that in air quotes.
Yeah.
And the decisions that the players make, you know, with the union, it is laughable. It is. But I'm almost viewing this, Mark, and that's a strong response, and it's got teeth to it, and the injury stuff is real. When I talk about this stuff, I, for me, almost have a GM / hat, a fan hat on, and for me, and 76% of Broncos fans, and I put out the poll a month ago, what's the most important thing this season? And for me and so many other fans, it's about developing the first-round quarterback.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, Phil and I have disagreed so much on that because he's about whoever gives you the best chance to win. And maybe that's Stidham, by the way. And the odds are shifting in that direction that Stidham could actually be the starter for day one. But for me, I would just like to see as much possible preparation for Bo Nix for this next era of Broncos football. They have to get this decision right. It's the second highest drafted quarterback in the history of this league. So almost everything that I'm viewing out there, I'm viewing through that lens.
Yeah.
So when I watch two consecutive practices in training camp that are fully padded, Mark, and it's single-digit passing attempts in a team period, I just bristle at it. I don't think that's.
Real quick.
Okay.
I think you guys are both kind of right, but I think you're both missing the point of what's going on here, and that is as simple as that. There's a lot thrown at these rookie quarterbacks, and if you follow the reports out of Chicago, Minnesota, New England, you're hearing a lot about these young quarterbacks really struggling at times, and I think this is as simple as. Even with all the experience that Bo has coming out of college, he's still drinking water out of the proverbial fire hose right now.
It's a completely different game.
I think this is all designed, the reps and everything are designed just to make sure in the early going of camp the dude doesn't get overwhelmed. I think it's as simple as that.
Mike, I think there's no question about that. And, Zach, you and I are on the same page. Like at the end of the year, regardless of record, the most important thing that we can come out with in the end of this year is we found our quarterback, and his name is Bo Nix. So I'm 100% with you on that, and I think what we'll see as quarterbacks continue, and Kurt said this, as camp goes on, he goes, you know, you get stronger, you get used to it, you get, and then, you know, managing your arm is not such an important thing. But early in camp, it becomes a very important thing. And he said because of his veteran nature, he was like, I knew which throws I needed to unleash, right? I needed to put something behind, and I knew what throws I could just kind of lollipop over and not put stress on my arm. And so his point was is that young quarterbacks don't know how to do that. So young quarterbacks, because they want to show off their arm talent, young quarterbacks need to be managed that way.